Maybe Marley coming through too.
Super. And that would be perfectly timed. If it is, it's now 7:15 p.m. So we can start the meeting. Welcome everyone to this virtual meeting of the External Scrutiny Panel, and welcome to anyone listening to the proceedings online via the live broadcast. Attendees will notice that you've been muted, and this will remain the case throughout the meeting so that one participant at a time speaks and to minimize any feedback. If members wish to speak, please use the raised hand function, which I will see, or the chat function, which the scrutiny officer will monitor. Please await your turn and speak when called to do so, remembering to unmute yourself first. While it is anticipated that proceedings will run smoothly, with the request to speak being directed through me, please, I reserve the right to mute, warn, or remove any contributors should they become disruptive in the virtual meeting. Okay, that's the formal stuff out of the way. Now for apologies, we have Councillor Pushpita Gupta, who is substituting Councillor Judith Garfield this evening. And although this meeting is quorate, I'm going to call members one by one to ask you to unmute and remute yourself and confirm your presence. So I'm going to go through in alphabetical order, starting with Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed, and I can hear you well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Saima Ahmed.
Present, Chair.
Thanks very much. Councillor Hannah Chowdhury.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Donovan.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pushpita Gupta. Oh, sorry, I think you're still on mute, Councillor Gupta.
Hi there, good evening.
Good evening, welcome, and a special welcome to your meeting, your first meeting with us as an external scrutiny substitute. And Councillor Mrs. Ryan, our Vice Chair.
Present, Chair.
Thank you very much. And our co-opted members, I hope are with us, Mr. Birdie. Can't hear anything. Are you there, Mr. Birdie?
I don't believe he's with us, Chair.
Maybe not. Do we have Mr. Holder?
Yes, I'm here.
Ah, good evening, Mr.
Yes.
Holder. Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, great. So, well, we'll see if Mr. Birdie can join us, but thank you, Mr. Holder, for joining us. And I think we can welcome the cabinet member who's here as well, Councillor Blackman, if she'd like to say hello. But she is here, so.
Hello.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask Redbridge officers and transport partners who are with us tonight to introduce themselves when they speak, rather than all go around now. If anyone loses connection during the meeting, so that's officers, transport colleagues or panel members, please try to rejoin using the calendar invite you have, If you need to dial in by mobile, then you may wish to put 141 before your number to ensure privacy, because it will be visible on the call. Okay, that takes us on to declarations of interest. I now need to remind members that they all need to declare any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest they or their spouse or partner may have in any matter that is to be considered at this meeting. Does anyone have any declarations of interest they need to make at this stage? Please raise a digital hand if you do. Okay, just wait a second. I'm not seeing any raised. Okay, so in that case, we'll go on to the minutes of the last meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes of the last meeting on page 1 and 2 of the agenda? Oh, Councillor Donovan, was that a hand raised? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, you've been. Sorry, Paul. I think you're muted again somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sent apologies and got a substitute last time, who was Bob Littlewood. And then Bob I think Bob contacted Martin Sachs about not being able to do it because of the change and the COVID rules. So, I mean, if you can just put the apology on there.
Noted, Chair. I'll make sure your apologies are recorded, Councillor Donovan.
Thanks very much, Cal, and thank you, Paul. Okay, so in that case, does anyone have any other corrections to the minutes? And if not, are members happy to agree those minutes as an accurate record of the meeting? Correct. I think there's a bit of feedback getting through from someone. I might just mute them. Right. Okay. If everyone's happy, I don't know whether I should ask to see nods, or I can see Councillor Mrs. Ryan nodding, so I'm reassured. Hopefully they're okay. Sorry. Yes. Actually, I should ask you to type agreed into the chat. If you can do that, please. Should have known that was the thing to do. If you panel members can put agreed in the chat, especially the ones who were at the meeting, that'd be very helpful. Councillor Ahmed and Councillor Ahmed. Great. I see a majority agreement signing. We're happy with that. Thank you very much. Okay, now on, I hope, to the public participation section. I'm hoping to welcome our Youth Parliament representatives. Can I just check that they are both here before we do that? It's Marley and Wafi. Can I just check you're both with us and you can hear us and we can hear you?
Present.
Hello, is that Wafi or Marley?
Wafi.
Hello, Wafi. Well, we can hear you, and I think we're just trying to see if Marley is with you too, so you can ask your question. Were you going to ask your question together or separately?
I forgot. I think I couldn't think of a question.
Okay, well that's all right. I think Marley has got a question for us, but it's great that you're both here. Let's just double check again. Vanessa, do you know if Marley's been able to join us yet, or Cal?
I think Cal said he came on earlier.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. There's a guest who's joined, so I was assuming joined about the same time as Wafi, and I thought, oh, that must be Marley, but
Sorry.
Well,
maybe not.
Who else could it be? I wonder. Well, if Marley is here and would like to unmute, then we're at the point where he can ask his question. If not, I mean, I can ask it for him, or alternatively, I'm happy to postpone the public participation section for now. We can have presentations and member questions and then come back.
I've just messaged him and I haven't got a reply. So if you'd like to, Councillor, don't think, yes, you can ask the question. That's fine, because I'm not quite sure what's happened with Marley, unfortunately. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. In that case, why don't I read the question that that Marley has sent in, and then Wafi, if you want to ask any of your own questions once the answer's been given to that, then I'll ask you then. So let's do that. Okay. This question was aimed at TfL, so I think we can let colleagues answer however they find easiest amongst them. The question is, what data has TfL got available with respect to personal safety on public transport, particularly in Redbridge? How will TfL ensure safety on our public transport, i.e. on buses and at train stations? This is with regard to personal safety and also COVID compliance with mask wearing. Yes, if someone or more than one colleague from TfL who's with us could answer that and maybe turn their camera on and introduce themselves when they do so.
Hi, Councillor. My name is Hanifa. I am the engagement officer at Transport for London. I believe the British Transport Police is covering some of that question. Are they on the meeting?
I think we've just had a message in the chat from Sergeant Bobkov. Are you a?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Would you
Sorry,
like to?
it's just my personal so my mobile device is not working. I had to use my wife's laptop to log in because it's
Okay.
her laptop comes up with her credentials. Sorry,
Not
I'm
to
not
worry.
Katie, but I work for BTP.
That's okay. Well, thank you, Sergeant Bob. We'll understand the confusion. And are you able? Did you hear the question when it was read out? And are you able
Yes,
to
absolutely,
answer it?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Oh, sorry, you want me to start now?
Please, yes, whenever you're ready. Yes.
Well, I've got a. I'll be honest with you. I've been pretty much asked this afternoon to present at this meeting because my inspector unfortunately has other engagements this evening, and he wasn't able to dial into this conference call. I've got a presentation. I'm just about to share a screen with you.
No, it wasn't the presentation at this point.
Oh, sorry.
It was just with regard to the young person's question about personal safety. If that's just something you could answer briefly now, in terms of the question was about personal safety and what's being done on public transport to ensure personal safety on public transport.
Well, absolutely. I think as a British Transport Police, we're responsible for safety of not just young people, but all passengers on our train services. And as such, we are running a number of initiatives, especially in East London in recent times. We run specific operations, namely, for example, one of them is Operation Viking, where we target stations that are known for antisocial behavior or people carrying weapons, where we put knife arches outside the stations and inside the stations. We have increased police presence where we try to introduce stop and search techniques to stop people, to discourage people from carrying weapons, or to discourage people who are trying to get onto network to commit crimes, discourage them from actually going on the network in the first place, making it a bit more hostile for them. I have to say that despite maybe general belief, generally speaking, London Underground is a very, 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 very safe place to be compared to the streets of London even. I think on average we get about maybe 8 crimes per 1 million journeys. So just to give you an idea, so it is very, very low. So very, very safe environment to be in the first place. But we do, as I said, have enhanced patrols at the moment. And now that the country is starting to come out of lockdown, we're trying to step it up as well with extra patrols by regular police constables, police community support officers, and we're running some operations, including special constables, trying to basically create, as I said, a safer environment and maybe for everyone traveling. I don't know if it helps or not. I can go into specific details, but it's going to be part of my presentation explaining the crime statistics for the borough of Redbridge specifically, with a breakdown of crimes, and you will probably be able to see that actually it's fairly safe to travel in public transport. I don't know about the buses, I'm afraid, but as far as London Underground is concerned, it's fairly safe.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Bogov. And yes, you're right. Obviously, we will see your presentation later. And if I wanted, did you have anything to add, or do any other colleagues have anything to add in terms of buses, as those were mentioned specifically, and mask compliance, face mask compliance? Sorry, you're still on mute, Anifa.
Sorry. I believe that there's a separate question with buses, so that all the buses questions will be answered once we get to buses. But British Transport Police has covered the enforcement, and I believe that his presentation will tell us more.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, I'm sort of hoping in Marley's absence that that question would be allowed. I think it's slightly. I can see a hand up. Katrina, did you want to come in on the question?
Yeah, just to give some a little bit of additional information, if you like, on the TfL rail stations that are in Redbridge, at Ilford, Seven Kings and Goodmays. So we, in terms of Marley, what we have sort of like the grassroots level is that all our stations have staffing from the start of service to the end of service. All our trains have CCTV on the trains, and if anyone was to press an alarm, they're picked up straight away by the driver, and the train would go straight into the nearest station, and the driver will talk to you all the way. We have great lighting on the stations, as well as CCTV on the stations as well, to keep you safe and in the lift. And as we've got staff at stations the whole time in distinctive uniforms, you could approach them. For face mask compliance, what we've been doing is that we do encourage people to wear masks, but we also like to support those who are exempt. And the customer community ambassador team, of which I'm the manager, during non-peak hours, Monday to Friday, on the trains, my team will go on the train between Liverpool Street and Shenfield, which incorporates our Redbridge stations as well. And we would talk to customers, ask how they feel about travel. We collect all the face mask data. And as I say, you know, we also speak to a lot of people who are wearing the sunflower lanyards. If they are exempt, we'll supply a sunflower lanyard. A sunflower lanyard is you wear it to show that you may have a hidden disability. So it could be something, you could be deaf, or you could have something that you don't, that is not actually visible to someone, but it does make you exempt, and people are getting to understand that's why they wear it. So we'll supply them as well. We give face masks to passengers who may have forgotten theirs, and we also work with a lot of schools around our area, close to our stations, and we provide them with face masks, and we don't go into schools, we do it virtually, and we give sort of like safety talks and mask supplying as well. From a grassroots level, I hope that answers the question a little bit for you.
Thank you, Trina. I think that was really helpful, and I hope that young people, I'm sure would find it useful. I'm sure any watching and listening at home would have found it really helpful too. It's a bit unorthodox, but if members will bear with me, usually we'd ask the questioner to have a supplementary question. I wonder, in this instance, if we could ask our other young person, Wafi, if you have another question on those from what you've heard, or about sort of anything related you'd like to ask, or Vanessa, I can see you come on.
I don't have a question yet.
Okay.
But did you understand all the answer, Rafi? Do you think it was answered?
I sort of understand, but not fully.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I know we're expecting some more details, Wafi, to come in the presentations we're getting later. And what normally happens is when people present to us, we get them to send copies of their presentations afterwards so that we can understand better. And I wonder if perhaps, Cal, we could ask that our young people provided with those this time as well, so that it's clearer for them as well.
Of course, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I can see hands from Hanifa and then Councillor Ahmed. Hanifa?
Yeah, hi, Councillor. Yeah, I would just like to add a point there as well, just because I know that we're speaking about young people. So we are continuing to take a range of measures to ensure that the public transport network is clean and safe, including enhanced cleaning regimes. We ask everyone travelling to continue following our safer travel guidance to protect themselves and others. It's compulsory for everyone aged 11 and over to wear a face covering over their nose and mouth throughout the public transport throughout their journey, unless they're exempt. And in regards to buses, bus windows should remain open to ensure a good supply of fresh air, even in the cold weather. So I know somebody did mention buses, so we are actually ensuring that all windows are kept open while on journeys, especially now with with the school returns as well. So buses get slightly busy, so windows are kept open to ensure fresh air.
Thank you for that. I think that's very helpful. Councillor Ahmed, Simon Ahmed, do you want us to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just about to say what Hanifa pointed out. Just a request through you to everyone, because we are responding to the children and young people, if we can break it down in a more explanatory way so that they will understand and take away from this meeting. Through you, Chair, just a little bit of suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ahmed. Of course, that's absolutely fine. I totally agree. And there's no expectation on our young people to stay beyond the duration of the public participation section, but as always, they're very welcome to stay for as much of the meeting, which is public, as they like. Hanifa, was that a new hand? Did you want to come in again?
No, I'm just trying to remove the old hand.
Not to worry, I'm sure Cal can help if that's
Okay.
some of your difficulties. Okay, so therefore, let's move on from the public participation section for now, and I'm going to thank Marley for sending in his question in advance, and Wafu for participating, and of course thank you to colleagues from MTR and TFL for giving their answers. So we'll now go on to the formal part of the meeting, the update from the public transport providers. And thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to invite you in turn to give your updates, and then members, if you could raise your hands after the presentations rather than during for questions. I think that'll be the most helpful thing. So we're going to start with the with the Underground, and I think we had Dale Smith. Yes, who has appeared. Thank you very much. And yes, just a reminder, if you could please introduce yourself before you start presenting. Then over to you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My name's Dale Smith. I'm the head of line operations for the Central Line and the Waterloo and City Line for London Underground. So I've been asked to give a bit of an update on our operations and our timetable. So I'm going to go through that, but I'm happy to take any questions when I've finished. So just overall, I think our network passenger numbers at the moment, we're currently around 40% of our normal demand on a weekday, and we're just over 50% on a weekend. So it's busier than it was early on in COVID, but still sort of some way short of our normal numbers. And it's stayed quite stable over the last month, actually. So since step 3 of the roadmap out of lockdown, we did see an increase in passenger numbers, but that's sort of stabilised now to say it's around 40% in the week and 50% of weekends. On the Central Line, our busiest times are between 0600 to 0800 in the morning, and between 1600 and 1800 in the evening. So they're sort of our busiest times, and so we would encourage people to travel outside of those times if they can, wherever possible. As regards our timetable, so we've actually been operating out a full daytime timetable since May last year, actually. So for the last 13 months, we reintroduced our full timetable for Daytube with an earlier start on a Sunday. So Sunday sort of has a similar start to Monday to Friday, and that's been going for about 13 months. And our performance for this financial year, so that's going back to the start of April, so that's the first 12 weeks, is we've operated 91% of our scheduled services. So that's our current performance. The challenges that we've had really throughout COVID is with our train operator resource. So obviously we've been impacted by COVID like many other organisations, and this did increase our staff absence. So people having to shield because of COVID or having to self-isolate through either being positive with COVID or being contacted by test and trace. So it did have quite a dramatic impact on our availability of train operators. The way we combated that was to utilise our night tube drivers. So they assisted with our day services. And on the Central Line, the Waterloo and City Line is staffed by Central Line drivers. So you'd be aware that the Waterloo and City Line was closed since March last year. So those train operators have helped to support the service on the Central Line, which is obviously much busier than the city is at the moment. Also, a big impact for our resourcing was our ability to train new staff. So we do have quite a high turnover in training and bringing people through into the train operator grade. And because of COVID restrictions and the social distancing difficulties with training someone, because you imagine having 2 people in a train cab, it's impossible to socially distance. So we did have to suspend our training for quite a long time. So that's really impacted our resourcing. The good news on that front is that we have now been able to restart all of our training. So we do now have a throughput of train operators, but it's going to take us a bit of time to get us back up to the number of drivers that we need to reinstate night tube. So I know that was a question that was asked previously. So I can't give you a date of when night tube will come back. We are still working on that around when that's going to be viable, but it does really depend on our train operator resourcing capacity. So once we can get those numbers back up, then we would be able to consider when night tube services could be reinstated. Just on the Waterloo and City line, because I just mentioned it, because we have been able to restart our training, we was able to restart the Waterloo and City line earlier this month. So that is a Monday to Friday service in the peaks. And then as we go a bit later into the year, where we expect to be people returning to the city and to the offices, that we would look to reinstate that full service at the appropriate time. I know Hanifa covered around what we're doing around cleaning. So we do have an enhanced cleaning regime on the tube, or across TfL actually. And we work with Imperial College London to carry out monthly testing on our network. So we test customer areas on buses and tubes. And since we started doing that in September 2020, we have had clear testing every single month. That's both swab and air sampling. So that's really good news to show that actually our controls are effective and our cleaning regime is doing its job. So that's my update. But I'm happy to take any questions from anyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dale. And just a reminder, any member, please, if we could have digitally raised hands, so I know you'd like to come in with a question for Dale. Okay. Mushtaq, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dale, for the presentation. And as you are seeing these numbers like increasing from over those very low, or literally, I think in some instances there was hardly anybody going to London. And now you said we are back during weekdays is 50%, 40%.
It's around 40% in the weekdays and about 50% of the weekends.
Is the increase, is that a gradual, or is the kind of you are that like on 50% and it's just that stagnant? So is it like gradually move 40 to 50 and it's upward trend?
Yeah, we've seen the numbers increase actually in line with the steps. So as we've moved through the steps and the government have released, the restrictions and sort of allowed more businesses to open, we have seen our passenger numbers increase in line with that. So May the 18th being the last one for step 3, we did see an increase in our passenger numbers. I think it went up about 20%, I think, overall. But that stayed relatively stable since then. Obviously, when we get to step 4, then we would expect, another jump in passenger numbers. But again, it just depends on, what businesses decide to do at that point. A lot of people are working from home at the moment, and we'll have to see, how many of those do actually return back to offices.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Next hand I saw was Councillor Mrs. Ryan. Oh, Councillor Mrs. Ryan, we can't hear you, I'm afraid. Sorry, you were not unmuted, I don't think.
Sorry, I did a double check. That better now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Dale, thank you, and thank you all the staff that have kept the trains going. I'm concerned about security for staff as well as passengers, and when, say, people are not wearing masks, and what kind of reaction on the whole are they getting? Are they getting much abuse? Unfortunately, I'm sure everyone saw in the papers Jeremy Corbyn's brother going round without a mask, taking all the stickers off the trains, telling people to social distance. I mean, are you finding much antisocial behaviour? On the whole, people very supportive and telling people that are not wearing masks to wear them? And I hope staff are not taking too much abuse, because we should be grateful for the service, and I'm sure most people are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm pleased to say that actually that the instances involving staff are very low. I know we've got BTP colleagues with us, and they've done a fantastic job in supporting staff for face mask enforcement. And we've also got our own revenue team, so they're the team that normally carry out ticket inspections and Oyster card inspections. They've been supporting the enforcement of face covering wearing as well. So that's worked pretty well.
Thank you. And long may that last.
Thank you, Councillor Stride. Was that your? Did you have any more questions? Oh, no.
No, I'm trying to lower it now.
Okay, thank you. I can see there are a couple of hands. There's the guest hand. Is one of them? I'm going to take a stab in the dark that one of them might be Mr. Holder. If that is you, Mr. Holder, would you like to unmute?
Am I pretty dark?
It's because there's only
Can you see me
just
now?
the letter A, so I thought it's probably short for your name.
Yes, I'd just like to TFL that sort of what improvements are you going to do about improving the service to Whipps Cross Hospital in the new development?
I think
Can you hear me?
Mr. Holder, that might be less
This
of
is
a
buses.
central line operations question than I think we're picking up the Whipps Cross question anon.
Yeah.
That's
Possibly
correct,
with
Chair.
buses. Although Hanifa, unless you want to come in, sorry.
Sorry, no, yeah, that's absolutely correct. So Stephen Phillips will be covering that when we get to buses.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Holder, we will still,
Okay, cheers, thanks.
not to worry, well, we will still have that answered specifically, hopefully very soon. If there are there any more questions, just to check for Dale in relation to the central line? Oh, Councillor Donovan, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, on the can you say a bit more about the enforcement in terms of when someone hasn't got a mask on? Are they warned? Are they fined, or what's the process?
So I think my BTP colleague is going to cover that in some detail, I think, after me. So it's probably best placed to answer that one.
Chair Waffy has his hand up. Yes,
I've seen. Sorry, I was coming. I can see Sergeant Bobcoff wants to come in, possibly just to confirm what was offered as his contribution later. But yes, Waffy, I can see you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. About for the transportation on trains and buses. How do people keep the distance away from the other people?
Okay, thank you. I think that's a very relevant question in light of talking about numbers going up. Can you talk in terms of the underground, in terms of distancing, Dale, at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we don't enforce, the social distancing on trains. It's just not viable for us to do that. You need a member of staff on every set of doors in every, as every train comes in. So, we do put the onus on individuals to make an assessment of whether they want to board a train. Obviously our trains, like I said, we aren't at full capacity, so some trains may come in and they might be quite busy. So I think we do leave it down to customers to make a decision whether that, whether they want to get onto that train, if there's enough space in there for them to feel comfortable, and to wait for the next train if that's not possible. So it is that we do, that is down to the individuals to make that their own assessment on whether the space is acceptable for them to board.
Thank you, Dale. Mr. Holder, have you got your? Is that a new hand? Do you want to ask a different question? Or was it the one you had up before? Ah, no, okay, it's gone down. Fine, in which case I assume it was an odd one. So thank you very much, Dale. As ever, you're welcome to stay, but if not, I understand if you want to log off. And thanks very much for updating us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. So the next update was from Transport for London buses. I don't know who was, sorry, I did have a name of who was presenting on behalf of the buses.
Stephen Phillips, Chair.
Ah, yes. Mr. Phillips, if you're able to.
Yeah, good evening, Chair. Just quick, my name's Stephen Phillips. I'm the bus service delivery manager for the Redbridge area. So I look after basically the buses that are running around the borough. When the buses have to go on diversions, roadworks, things like that, I have to make sure that we try and keep to our timetables as best we can. And I work closely with the bus operators that run your services in the borough. That's basically my job in a bit of a nutshell. With regards buses, obviously, very much we are on the lines with what Dale presented with the underground. With regards capacity, now buses now are full available. Where they were reduced during the first lockdowns, there is no restrictions now for how many people can actually board a bus. We do rely on people to take their own measures. Obviously, it's very drivers are reminding people when they come on to make sure they're wearing face masks. We're also got to have posters all around the transport network on our bus stations, just advising customers to follow those guidelines. And we also are making regular announcements on the network for advising that. So all our buses, as Dale put out, all our buses are cleaned from when they come out of service to when they go back into service with the hospital grade. So we are doing, for buses wise, we are trying to keep the best we can. Service wise, obviously, the bus schedules are up to full schedules now. We are running full schedules. There was obviously the extra school buses that were put on to assist when we could. So they are still on at the moment, but they are slowly now. Buses are back to full capacity. They are not quite as of much now, but they are still very much used. We are seeing very much peak during the school for children going in and back to schools. But general passenger is picking up. Unfortunately, I haven't got a full percentage on the increase at the moment. That's basically a brief synopsis of what the buses are. Obviously, with regards the bus fleet themselves, bit of some good news. Obviously, as of January this year, we're glad to report that TfL's full 9,000 fleet have now become Euro 6 standard. That's due to on our emission standards. So this was followed by an extensive retrofitting program, which was now completed, which will see harmful NOx emissions from buses fall by an average of 90% and improve London's air quality. With regards to the air, obviously we have now more than 500 zero emission buses on London's roads. Most recent one most people might saw was the introduction of the hydrogen fleet that came onto service just the beginning of last week. And all being well, subject to sustained long-term investment from the government, TfL aims to achieve a zero emission fleet by as early as 2030. So, I mean, that's probably about it at the moment. I know there's a question from Mr. Holder, wasn't it, about Whipps Cross? I can touch on that if you wish.
I think there may actually be quite a lot of discussion around the Whipps Cross issue.
Okay.
Thank you. What I'll ask is now if members have any other questions with regard to buses. Oh, I see Councillor Mrs. Ryan has leapt to it already, so I'll give her the first question. If you'd like to unmute, Councillor Mrs. Ryan. Well, we can't hear you yet, Councillor Mr. Ryan. We've gone a bit blurry, but if you've started. There we go.
Okay, now you okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How much, fine. How much of a liaison do you do with actually our highways officers and our planning officers? Because one member has asked me, they live in the Woodford-Chingford area, and they have 7 lots of emergency lights near them, and there's been seemed to have been no effort to reschedule, you know, absolute chaos. So I'm just wondering, how much liaison do you actually have with highways and with planning when you know things are going to happen? Whips Cross, of course, is a major issue, because with the redevelopment, I mean, there's inadequate access to Whips anyway, too small, 1-story bus. I mean, and there are no plan. We want to know the plan. What plans are going to be in place? Because there's going to be less car parking, and it's very difficult as it is. So we want to know what plans you've got to actually improve transport too. And things like when you have to close bus stops, you close the bus stop and you put a sign up, but when it comes back, you don't put the sign down. And this has happened a lot at Hainault Station recently. People don't know whether there is a bus stop in there or there isn't a bus stop in there. And there's long walks between these temporary bus stops. And that's not fair on residents. That should be far better organised. And certainly in the Hainault area, there's going to be 20 miles an hour down one stretch. There's only 2 main roads through Hainault, one of which is North Road, and then a small temporary bus goes down there. But in Hainault, the bus route through Hainault, there is going to be a 20, half of that, islands and cutouts. So it's going to slow the traffic down considerably. Have you actually had consultation with our highways people to find out what's going on? Because it is going to cause absolute chaos. So they're things that I've been asked to ask. And of course, Whips is the most important thing at the minute with this new development, because the bus services is totally inadequate. And have you actually got plans in of what you're going to do, or are you still thinking about it? Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and answer, so you can, to Mrs. Ryan, as much as I can. With regards the highways and the amount of roadworks that have been going on, for planned works, yes, we do very much work with the Redbridge officers in the highways department. As a partner, we are very much, they will talk to us, so we try and make sure there's not one set within, you know, altogether, because it could cause problems and delays to our bus routes. Unfortunately, under the New Roads and Street Works Act, which is obviously what the operators work on, if there's an emergency, they have the right to immediately access their equipment.
Yeah.
So what happens is you could have a planned set of works and you get a burst water main, and so when it comes to emergency stuff, we will be told by if it's a bus on that road, we'll be told by the utility company, but unfortunately we don't have any say when that work happens because they have to do it. But when it comes to planned stuff, yes, we do work with your officers. With regards to Hainault, yes, we have been consulted, and we have worked with them. Obviously, there was a few concerns at the start, but obviously, as it is a safety scheme, we fully support it as we would. The bus stops. What's happening at the moment is where the works are going on the safety scheme, they are dropping in lights and out as they're working along. And what we're finding is we could open the stops at Hainault, and then the next day we're having phone calls asking us to close them again. So we're trying to work with them closely at the moment to try and get that in place, because I've had a few complaints obviously come through our customer services department as well with regards to those stops at Hainault. We did try to put some temporary stops out. One was up by the shops, just back towards Fencepiece Road.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, cars decided they would still park there, and also our temporary stops were stolen. So we find, so it's we are trying our best, and that's what we do and try and do. Obviously, I can answer Whips Cross, but I know Councillor Morgan Thomas, that you said that was a more of a general thing, or is it?
Just I've seen some other hands up. I just want to see who else raised it, just in case they've got any other aspects
Okay.
of it they want to bring up, if that's okay. But for now, I
Yep.
just want to. I've seen Mr. Holder, not to deprive you of your Whips Cross question, because I know it's coming. But did you have anything else you wanted to ask now, just in case?
Yes, I do, Chair. It's just basically Councillor Ryan sort of put through the questions I was going to put through, but still the question still stands, still lies. It's not what improvement you're going to do between Whips Cross services to Woodford, because the residents in Woodford are complaining bitterly about the service that they receive. So I'm asking you, what improvement with this new development? What's the improvement that we're going to expect for Woodford, especially from Woodford to Whips Cross, together with the car park situation, which Councillor Ryan has already addressed? So my main concern is, Chair, is that what's the improvement that we're going to expect with this new development, and as of now, to get a better service to Whips Cross from Woodford? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holder. Councillor Donovan, I can see you've got a hand up. Is it Whips Cross related? If it is, or if it isn't, you can ask
It's
it.
not
I think then
it's not
finally we will come.
related, no.
Okay, well, fire away.
It's you said about 900. You've got 900 zero emission buses.
That's correct.
And
Yep.
you hope to get
9,000. No, 500. Sorry, 500 zero emissions. Sorry, I get it right. Yeah, 500 is
500.
Yes.
And you hope to get them up to the whole fleet being zero by 2030. Yeah,
That's correct. Yes.
is that the 9,000?
Yes.
Right. That seems quite a long time. Or is that dependent on the funding from government? Or
That's exactly what it depends on. We are doing what we can to get the fleet in as quick as we can, but it depends. My colleague that asked just for sending down to have put, it is subject to sustained long-term investment from the government.
right. Is it possible to say how many are operating Redbridge? Zero.
I can find out. I can't answer that at the moment, but I can find out for you. That's not a problem.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Thanks very much, Councillor Donovan. I think that'll be helpful for the panel to know when it's around. I did see a hand flicker from Councillor Blackman, and I can take a question from the cabinet member.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, actually, my question was the same as Councillor Donovan's. Actually, was how many of those zero emission buses are going to be in the borough? I'm quite interested to know what the strategy is on where they will be placed first. I'm assuming probably you've gone for more central London bus routes, but obviously as Redbridge, part of Redbridge goes into the ultra low emission zone, hopefully we'll see more of them out this way. And I know certainly in our ward of Wanstead Village, we do often get complaints about buses idling, particularly at Woodbine Place, and that's not so great because it's near a children's playground and it's near residents. So it would be good if some of those areas where buses pull up regularly in residential areas could also be prioritised for zero emission.
Absolutely, Councillor. I'm not sure what the strategy is. I know there are some boroughs that have got them already. For instance, I also look after Havering, and I know that the Route 174 has just gone to all electric. So they are. It's not just being in central London. I think it depends when the fleet comes, and when it's when the bus garages are obviously upgraded to be able to do electric charging. If they're having electric charging vehicles, obviously they've got to make sure the upgrades are in place. But I'm quite happy from yourself and Councillor Donovan to find out there and see if there is any plan for it. And I can report that back to Cal, and she can report that back for you.
Thanks very much, Dibben. Cal, I can see you've got your hand up. Did you want to come in?
Just to let you know, Chair, that Marley has been able to join the meeting.
Ah, well, welcome to Marley. You were welcomed in your absence earlier, Marley, and I did ask the question you sent in, which officers had a chance to answer. But just to let you know, we are hearing next from, or in a little while, from our colleagues from the British Transport Police, and your question was about safety. So perhaps if you want to listen to the presentation from the British Transport Police in a few minutes, and then maybe you'll be able to ask if you have any extra questions then. I hope that sounds all right if you're able to stay with us. So I'll just suggest that for now. Marley, and welcome, and we'll come there in a little while. Okay, so just before we then let Stephen get away, if there aren't any other bus-related questions that we could all ask, and obviously you've heard from several members regarding the Whipps Cross issue. I'll just say before you answer it, I mean, this is something a lot of us, it's a predominantly a west of the borough issue. Obviously, we know that Whipps Cross isn't in Redbridge, but in fact that increases our issue because it's thinking about connectivity outside of the borough is as much an issue for us as within the borough, because it's a journey that obviously a huge number of our constituents have to make. I mean, in the thousands really of the total Redbridge population. And it does relate to, like Councillor Mrs. Ryan, Mr. Holder said, it's not just the hospital and the current access to the hospital and the future hospital, but it's also the development and the fact that Whipps Cross as a residential area will need to have access to Woodford and Wanstead, in particular, if it's going to benefit our borough to have people coming to our high streets and joining our communities there too. But with that, I'll let you say your piece on Whipps Cross if you could.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I obviously, once this came through, we spoke to our colleagues in transport planning to see what the updates they had. Like I said, I deal with the day-to-day running, so they had to some. What I've been provided by one of them, I do apologise, is probably not going to give you the full answers that people are asking for, and I'll obviously, they've given me the synopsis of the basic of what's happening with Whipps Cross, which obviously most people are aware. It's been a new build with new homes. What my colleague came back with was, at the time with the plans, we was rather hoping to get a progressive routing in place through the hospital site. So that would also allow us to divert buses away from Lee Bridge Road and give us better access for other areas. Unfortunately, this looks like a very unlikely it's to happen. Obviously, the King George's, with regards extra bus services, at the moment, as they've said to me, as always, changes to bus network will need to have regard to funding available as well as represent good use of limited resources. It's not the answer people have asked for, unfortunately. Because we didn't. That's another thing we can come back on with what's the plans to give extra. There are bus routes that come in from all the different arms. Obviously, the 20 comes in. You've got the W12. I know is the only one that comes from the Wanstead area. But obviously, from tube lines from Leytonstone, there's 3 high frequency routes to go up there. And also the other point that I was asked to point out is obviously there is the hopper fee of the buses. So you can travel on 2 buses within an hour for the same price. So it's more of a connectivity for the routes. May not just be 1 bus to get you there, but 2 buses could.
Okay, thank you for your response. I mean, I think members, bearing in mind that Stephen's already told us he's not responsible for these, perhaps we should frame our responses to that not in a way to ask why you are or aren't doing something, but maybe in a way for us to give you our thoughts to take back to your colleagues who've written that statement. I think that would be a helpful way of framing it. Councillor Mrs. Ryan, I can see you've got your hand up again. Would you like to come in? But please unmute before you do.
I hadn't unmuted it. There's actually about 100,000 residents in Redbridge that go with us, outside of the borough, and not your fault, Philip, but I would like, please, members to be sent written report of what is planned and what isn't planned, because it's extremely disappointing. I mean, those 2 little small buses only take a few people, and there's only a couple of an hour anyway. And that is such a massive development at Whipps, and it's going to have a massive impact, as I said, on over 100,000 residents in Redbridge. So I would like to have, actually, please, if you would, Chair, ask for a written report to come to us, all members, can be circulated, please, about what is coming and what isn't coming, what's proposed and what's not, because it sounds very much, I'm afraid, much of the same. And that's much of the same with actually less parking. And a lot of our members are very elderly too, people that travel to Whips. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mr. Ryan. Councillor Donovan, I can see your hands up.
Yeah, I mean, on same theme. I mean, the provision of buses for Whips Cross at the moment, I don't think is adequate from Redbridge. And with the new hospital coming and the plans there, cutting down the parking to I think 500, and the aim is to reduce cars, etc., with the housing that's being put in there as well, the 1,500 housing units. With an emphasis on public transport, cycling and walking, active travel. I mean, it should really be given a priority to provide a better bus service, because I think it's vital for people of Redbridge, probably vital for people of Waltham Forest as well. So I mean, I think it's a need at the moment, but it's going to become a priority, high priority with the new hospital, and it should all be part of that process of building that new hospital.
I can pass it through. Myself and obviously Jennifer, who's our engagement officer, will be able to pass that through and ask, if there can be, as Councillor Mrs. Ryan has asked for, a plan for what's the plan, and we'll see what comes back by all means.
Thank you, Stephen. Mr. Holbright, I thought I saw a hand up briefly. Did you want to come? No, that was
yes, Chair. Just one more simple addition to what both gentlemen, both Councillor Ryan and Councillor Paul said. It's not only we have an aging population, what we have increasing population as well within the boroughs. Both boroughs, Leytonstone, despite Leytonstone is not in our sort of borough, but sort of you're looking at Redbridge, and sort of we have got a large population and sort of new residents coming in. So therefore, it is essential that we have a good bus service. Just in addition to what Councillor Ryan just said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Holder. If there are no other members, maybe it's worth pointing on. Members did have a chance to ask the Barts Health Trust at a members' briefing a couple of weeks ago about transport links to the hospital, who very unsurprisingly said that it would be in the remit of Transport for London to provide transport links and the sustainable agenda. And I asked then, and I'll ask now for transparency because it's a public question, why or whether Transport for London, through it's sort of being chaired by the Mayor of London and as part of the London Assembly's powers for large schemes, whether Transport for London would generate a Section 106 payment specifically for bus routes, as there is precedent for funding routes for new developments out of the monies that are usually put towards them. I think it's a question that needs to be asked. I think it's very reasonable for Transport for London to say that the routes are required on funding, but here is a developer getting ready to put a very large amount of money towards the Mayor of London and effectively which could go towards Transport for London for exactly the sustainable travel needs that this site needs. And it doesn't really matter whether it's 1,200 or 1,500 units of homes or 7 floors or 8 floors of hospital. I think what we've heard tonight is that members and our residents are very aware that actually the hospital is bad to get to now, and especially what you've said about through traffic not seeming likely to change bus routes, I think is disappointing if it's not going to mean a substantial change. But I think we also have to be wary of an operational crisis down the line where the building work is happening, and actually we can't afford to lose the very small number of services we have going from Redbridge direct to the hospital while the work's being done. So I think it would really help if, as Councillor Mr. Ryan said, we could have a note of what's proposed, but also how services will be planned so that we don't lose every other one of our 2-hourly W12s to Wanstead and South Woodford, because frankly that will not be a service if we end up with only having one an hour gets through. That's something we really need to protect while this work's happening.
Yep, quite happily. Like I said, I'll quite happily pass that through to my colleagues and see what we can come back with. No problem at all.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Stephen, for your general update and especially for passing on what you have about Whipps Cross. Once again, you're very welcome to stay with us for the rest of the meeting if you'd like to, but otherwise, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll move on to our next update.
Thank you.
Which is, he says confidently, having not lost his place in his notes, our next update is, of course, I did say earlier, from the British Transport Police. So, Sergeant, if you'd like to rejoin us. Thank you.
Absolutely. First of all, hello to everyone. And I just would like to apologize maybe for a slightly confusing answer I gave earlier, because I was trying to sort out all the technical issues I've been having with my equipment. And maybe, so I'm just going to start by linking you into the presentation. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. Let me try to get it to work. I'll share my screen with you. Let me try. Sorry, it's uploading now. And obviously, once I've gone through the presentation on the crime numbers over the past 12 months or so, or the previous reporting year, I hopefully will be able to answer some questions at the end.
Okay, yes, we can see your screen now. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just scroll up to the start of it. I do apologize. So I just opened. Yes, so the crime statistics for the London Borough of Redbridge. I can very briefly just touch on the methodology just to explain where the numbers came from. And I will then concentrate on the crime figures themselves. In British Transport Police, we use the system called Niche that records all the crime occurrences as they're being referred to. And it is a very thorough system that allows us to see where occurrences take place, what type of crime occurrences take place, dates, etc., and including the suspects, victims, and so on. It also allows us to analyze the system in quite a detail. As you can see here, we'll be able to run some comparisons and also give us maybe a bit of a look into the ethnicity breakdown for victims and suspects, and gives us a bit more of a breakdown into particular crime groups, if that's okay. And let me just, thank you. I'm just trying to move on to the next page. So for the financial year of 2021, it was an unusual year for us, of course, because it began in April of last year, soon after the lockdown began, and it affected the number of people traveling on our underground and rail networks, even through the borough of Redbridge. I think early in the lockdown last year, we saw numbers drop to almost 10% of the usual numbers we expect, and clearly it somewhat affected the numbers of crime that occurred. So last year was an unusually low crime year, if you like, for us. And as you can see, there is a bit of a graph here that indicates how the numbers of crimes changed over the months. And April and May, we had a massive drop in number of crimes per month through the borough, and it went up dramatically as the first lockdown eased towards the July, climbing from virtually less than 10 crimes a month to nearly 35 in the month of July. And it stayed pretty much the same until December, when we went into the next lockdown, and that's when the crime numbers dropped again. Although the second lockdown, as you're probably all aware, wasn't as severe as the first one. And I think quite a few people, I wouldn't say ignored, but maybe felt a bit more relaxed about taking public transport during these months. And as you can see, the numbers on the graph are translated into actual numbers. You can see in April we had 11 crimes, 8 in May, going up to 23 in June, 32 in July, and then steadily staying very similar throughout the year. December and January slightly higher than the previous months, but we usually have higher numbers in those months anyway. December is obviously around Christmas time, a lot of Christmas shoppers, a lot of extra journeys being undertaken in that month, and it usually leads to increase in criminality on our network as well. And January, very, very similar. In the past, it was always associated with January sales, but traditionally still we've got more people going back to work after Christmas holidays, and again it leads to a number of crimes going up. In total, we still had only 269 crimes throughout the whole 12 months of previous reporting year. So if you look maybe into breakdown of the crime groups for the recorded offences within the borough, and the biggest crime group for us, as you can see, was let me just, I'm scrolling down with my graffiti had 52 crimes. However, out of 52 crimes, which is nearly 20% of the total figure, we had a large proportion of this 32 were so-called etchings. Etchings is virtually if somebody use a permanent marker pen to draw something inside a train carriage, it gets recorded as a crime because clearly it will require some sort of remedy, i.e. a cleaning team will have to be called out, or the train carriage will have to be cleaned inside during the night time. And it does get recorded as a crime, but it's a very low level crime. It could be something as small as a small tag the size of a fist being drawn somewhere by the seat on the wall. And only 20 of those were probably larger graffiti murals, something that we always think about when we think about graffiti on trains, something being sprayed with paint on the side of the train. Violence is traditionally a big crime group for us, and we had 43 violent offences recorded. Having said that, when we think about violence, it doesn't necessarily mean a serious assault. In this case, 35 of these 43 offences were violence without injury, which could be anything from somebody being threatened with a raised fist to somebody being pushed on a platform or on a train as part of altercation, where a person doesn't sustain any injury at all, physical anyway. And only 8 of those offences were offences where injury was sustained. And again, I don't know the exact breakdown, but in my experience as a police sergeant, I would imagine that most of these offences would probably be low-level injuries, possibly bruising or broken skin, rather than serious or severe injuries. The other crimes, sorry, let me just maybe touch on other crimes very, very quickly as well, if that's okay. The other crimes, as you can see, are spread fairly evenly. We had theft from motor vehicle, which is a big crime for all the outer London boroughs with the stations that have station car parks. Unfortunately, these stations do get targeted by the individuals who come to steal from motor vehicles. And over the past 2 years, we had a rise in a particular type of vehicle crime where the catalytic converters have been stolen from some of the vehicles. And it became quite prolific, as I said, in some of the London boroughs. More North London, but East London was touched as well by that particular type of crime. Theft of passenger property is a traditionally high crime for London Underground. There was a documentary a few years ago about our pickpocket teams trying to catch pickpockets in action. And yes, so anything to from pickpocketing to people leaving their property on the trains or platforms, and then the property never gets recovered. It all gets recorded as theft of passenger property. We had 37 of those reported and recorded in the borough of Redbridge. We had 41 public order offences crime, which is basically serious. When it comes to serious public order, anything where the person sustains verbal abuse or threats of violence being made towards a person gets recorded as serious public order. Moving on to the next one. As you can see, there is a bit of a breakdown of the bigger crime groups per calendar months from April until March of 2021. And again, as you can see with the crimes, we had quite a big drop in April and May, with the crimes steadily climbing throughout the year, especially during the summer months when the first lockdown came to an end. So the top 5 crime groups, as I mentioned before, were graffiti, violence, public order, and theft of passenger property, and pedal cycle theft, again from the stations. Again, seasonality of the offences that I mentioned, and the higher figures are more consistently happened during the summer months when lockdown was eased. And usually, again, summer months, we have a bit of increase in public order offences and violent offences because of more people going out, enjoying their drink, and unfortunately, not everybody is able to enjoy their drink peacefully. People sometimes become a little bit more aggressive once they had a couple of beers. But overall, that's the comparative graphs down there. Overall, we're not doing too badly. Now, there is another graph that our analytical department prepared for us, and it's a breakdown of victims of crime by their ethnicity. Not every victim of crime would like to share their ethnicity with us when the crime is being recorded, and sometimes people choose not to share their ethnicity, or ethnicity is not known to us when the crime is getting recorded via the internet or by telephone, because obviously we don't want to make assumptions or guess. So out of victims of crimes, named victims, when the Crown wasn't the victim of crime, as out of total 63 victims, we had a known ethnicity. And 47% of those victims were perceived to be white North European, and 31% were Asian. I would imagine, councillors, you've got a better idea as to ethnic breakdown of your borough to probably be able to guess how representative it is of the population in the borough of Redbridge. And now looking at the defined ethnicity of the known suspects, people who actually have been identified and through CCTV, or people have been arrested. And again, suspects are given an opportunity to either define their ethnicity themselves, or they can decline to be defined ethnically, and then in this case, obviously they won't be included in the statistics. So out of all the identified criminals, 26 of them were white North European, 3 were white South European, 11 were of black ethnicity, 6 of them were Asians, and 6 of them chose weren't identified or chose not to state their ethnicity on record. So about 50%, as you can see, were white North European, which is not dissimilar to the number of victims. Now, as a national overview and crime COVID-related demand, about 50, currently our crime levels across BTP stand about 50% compared to the previous year. And as I mentioned throughout my presentation, during the pandemic, crime levels fluctuated based upon the criteria set out by the government. And there's a mention of lockdown 3, it hasn't happened yet, but at the moment, and as Dale Smith of Central Line mentioned, we are running between 40 and 50% of our service. And it kind of is reflected in the crimes that are occurring. They're at very similar levels, about 50%. And we're expecting the crimes to increase slightly, especially going from September onwards. There was a slight increase in crimes in this year, reporting year as well, in May and June when schools went back. And the crimes actually here, our analytical department were predicting the crimes to increase up to 75% from 17th of May onwards. I'm pleased to say it actually hasn't quite happened. The crimes gone up to about maybe 65-70% of the 2019-20 year figures. Some more graphs for you to look at, and obviously understand this presentation is going to be circulated afterwards. So if you would like to look at this in greater detail later on, or I can try to maybe explain if anybody would like to, but I don't want to take too much of your time going through these numbers. So obviously COVID is a big theme, so I'll try to talk maybe a little bit more about how COVID affected our crime numbers in more detail. There was a clearly strong correlation with some crime categories and a reduction in footfall. For example, as footfall reduced, crimes such as theft, violence, and cycle crime reduced at the same rate. Other crime categories showed a negative correlation with footfall, which meant they continued to impact on PTP at similar levels, or not to the same level of reduction we saw with footfall. So crimes such as graffiti, criminal damage, and robbery either increased against the usual levels or remained the same during the pandemic. Drugs and weapons are operationally and proactively driven, and therefore at higher than usual levels. As you can possibly imagine, what it means that unfortunately people who use our network to take drugs between different locations will carry on doing so regardless of pandemic and lockdown, and they will carry weapons with them habitually for protection, as they would describe it, or they will use our network to try and steal or rob from passengers, unfortunately, regardless of how many passengers there are on a train. Those crimes, as the report says, are less visible when network demand is higher. But at the same time, because there are less passengers on trains, the officers are more able of detecting those crimes. I personally work on Docklands Light Railway, and I've only been asked at the very last moment to step in and do this presentation for you. But I can tell you that on Docklands Light Railway, for example, we have a very high number of arrests for drug-related and weapon-related offences compared to previous years, based on the fact that these people who are going on our network to commit crime are much more visible now with lower levels. Obviously, I would imagine that most of you have heard about County Lines government-led initiative trying to stop our rail network being used and transport network being used to transport drugs between different parts of London and between London and the counties. And it's still a big ongoing initiative for us, with a large number of arrests that being well publicized in the national and local newspapers. The impact of footfall on sexual offending is not quite fully understood. We still get sexual offences continued reported on BTP because we still got people going out there and committing offences, and the offences range from something as low level as, well, I say low level, it's relatively low level, maybe as indecent exposure, to something as serious as sexual assaults. Having said that, the number of sexual assaults on London Underground is very, very low at the moment compared to previous years. Talking about sexual offences, over the last 6 or 7 years, BTP have been running a number of initiatives. The longest running one of them was called Operation Guardian, when we were actively encouraging people to report any sort of unwanted sexual behavior or sexual offences on our network. And I think we've seen a massive increase in the first 3 or 4 years of this initiative, and now it's all kind of leveled out. But we believe that some of these offences still go unreported. So we'll continue to encourage people reporting this sort of crimes to us. And talking about COVID, obviously this, as I said, this presentation is going to be shared with you, but talking about COVID and something that Mr. Smith asked me to touch on when he was doing his presentation on Central Line and on what Central Line staff are doing to ensure that people traveling on the underground comply with the COVID regulation. We run an operation called Operation Red Cedar. It's been going on since March, end of March of last year, and it's still going on when we deploy a large number of police officers in uniform at the key locations, big hub stations, and key intersections, including some stations in the borough of Redbridge, where police officers travel on trains and are static at the stations, ensuring that people traveling through the stations are wearing masks. I don't know the exact numbers for the borough of Redbridge, but I believe that overall compliance across London Underground is in the region of 93 to 96%, depending on time of day and day of the week. So obviously, as the country coming out of the lockdown, we've got a plan in place trying to address any possible increases in criminal activity and reported crimes on our network. And it's a multi-staged plan, and I will touch on it in a second. It's on this slide here called Roadmap Out of Lockdown Basic Response. So as you can see, now we have missed, or the deadline of the 21st of June have been moved by the government, and this roadmap touches on what we've been doing since we've started coming out of lockdown in April. As you can see, our next steps are going to be in response to a significant rise in people using the network once we come out of lockdown. All the traditional crimes will increase again, and in response to that, we are planning to increase number of officers on our network, especially during the busier times, rush hour, in the morning rush hour, and especially afternoon and evenings. At the moment, obviously, with Euros taking place, we had a large number of officers with their rest days cancelled and the rest day re-rostered coming out on the network to ensure that the level of public order offending stays low and public stays reassured and passengers are safe traveling up and down even during the increased passenger footfall during Euros. And we will continue to do so once basically the same plan remains for the month of July. We will have more officers on the system whilst people are getting used to the returning, basically when things starting to return to normal, if you like. And that's pretty much the end of my presentation. If you have you've got any questions, if you want me to clarify anything, please do let me know.
Thank you. Suddenly, I think the best thing might be if you could stop sharing your screen, just because else we'll get feedback.
I think I'm just coming out.
There we go. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see me now.
Okay, I can see some hands going up now from members. This isn't the usual order of things, but just because I'm aware of the time.
Sorry, if I spoke too long, I do apologize.
No, not at all. I just want to ask, I can see members' hands up, but I did say at the start that I'd let our youth council member ask if he had any questions for you, because he wasn't here to hear the answers to questions about security earlier. So it's okay if you don't have any question, Marley, but do you want to ask a question of Sergeant Bobkov, about security?
I think I'll allow the councillors to go first, Chair, and then if I have any questions on after, I'll put my hand up and ask.
Okay, thank you very much, Molly. Well, in that case, I will go to panel members first. Councillor Mrs. Ryan, I think I saw your hand go up first.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Sergeant Murphy, but I have a real bugbear about having presentations sent to us before the meeting. I couldn't read a word of what was on the screen. It was too small, not your fault, and you were landed with it. But had we been sent that presentation before, we could have read it and then got the information and then asked what I considered meaningful questions relating to what we could see, because you kept saying, as you can see, and I couldn't see anything because it was too small. But I'm very grateful, and we will get the presentation. And then if there's questions I want to ask, I'll send them in with Kalbinder. But I do want to emphasise that really when there are presentations, then there was no excuse. That could have been sent to us. Not your fault, but you could perhaps pass that on. We could have had that and we would have studied it and we could have known what you were actually talking about, because I'm sure most people's eyesight, it was a bit small for them too. But thank you very much for coming and stepping in and letting us know what's going on. And now we can have the presentation, and through Kalbinder we can ask. And I'm grateful to you for coming and doing it.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and you've made an extremely valid point, and I will make sure that it's passed on to my colleagues, whoever is going to be representing British Transport Police next time, that this particular, the next presentation is circulated well in advance.
Thank you. I have a real bugbear about it. Thank you.
Much easier, rather than me trying to read through it for you. You can actually study it, and we can just talk about it rather than going through sometimes cold and boring facts and figures and trying to study graphs together. That's a very, very valid point. Thank you very much. I'd rather have a live discussion about this than trying to go through it and take up your valuable time and everybody else's time. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Mrs. Ryan. Cal, I think I see your hand up. Do you want to come in just in response?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to come in and advise members that the presentation was received in advance. It wasn't circulated with the papers because we don't normally get a presentation from British Transport Police. It is normally a verbal report, and around access to information, etc., it was felt better that rather than that the information will be provided to members immediately after the meeting. And I think there's just been some difference in communication, having two different scrutiny officers and not us normally not having a presentation as such from BTP. So I wouldn't want Sergeant to go back to his colleagues because they did fulfil that, Councillor Mrs. Ryan. So, and we'll pick it up for going forward for future meetings too.
Oh, good. Thank you, because it would have been, because that was so technical, it would have been so much better to have had it. Thank you. Anyway.
I've got it. I'll circulate it tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's not the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and thank you for that, Cal, as well. I can see there are some other hands up. Mr. Holder.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I was going to bring up the points you brought up about, and thank you, Cal, for putting clarity on what you just said. The question I had is sort of my concern was about car theft. Catalytic sort of converters installed in the car park. I just want to ask, with all the CCTV cameras you have in your facilities and at your disposal, why is it so high? Why is the figure so high?
It's a very good question. We are trying to investigate these crimes. In my experience, and I've been a police officer for, well, coming up to 15 years now, I have to say that these crime trends come and go. And over the last couple of years, it was catalytic converters, because I would imagine the price of scrap metal and price of precious metals inside catalytic converters was quite high. CCTV in itself acts as a deterrent, but for some criminals, it's risk versus reward kind of question. And if the price of precious metals found in catalytic converters like palladium or platinum is very, very high, they're prepared to run this risk of stealing a few of those and then possibly getting caught, but we don't always recover the proceeds of their crimes, if it makes sense. We're trying our best, but unfortunately, these crimes still do occur. It's as it's like it's risk versus reward for the criminals, unfortunately, and the risk. However well we detect these crimes, the reward is too high still.
Can I, Chair, if I may, if your permission, can I just ask the Sergeant, sort of, those cameras, are they sort of monitored? Is somebody present monitoring those cameras, or those cameras have been set and then somebody view the recordings afterwards? I just need to know, because if somebody's actually present, then therefore it would have stopped a lot of theft within the car parks.
I would imagine that each and every station, underground station, has a supervisor's office where there is a member of staff monitoring some of the cameras. But however, I have to say that some of those stations have an excess of 40 or 50 cameras, and only have got maybe 4 or 5 screens available to them. So we'll probably be focusing on cameras that are more, so like more critical, safety critical, rather than car parks, I'm afraid. It would be something to do with the platforms where people can come to a risk of serious harm, or, or basically serious risk to their lives. And those cameras usually get monitored more often than the car parks. If we know there's a particular problem with a particular location, like a particular car park that's being constantly targeted, then obviously these cameras are likely to be monitored as well. We also have a separate unit based at Ebury Bridge near Victoria that has access to pretty much every single CCTV camera on London Underground and on National Rail within M25, and they would be monitoring specific hotspot locations for us as well. But sometimes, even if we see somebody committing a crime on CCTV, due to the nature of BTP being a national force, we've got a small number of police stations across London. The nearest one probably would be Stratford, to the borough of Redbridge. Although we've got officers on patrol, our response time sometimes 10, 15, 20 minutes from the moment the crime gets reported, depending on severity of the crime. If we're responding on blue lights, it's slightly shorter. If we're responding on priority, basically driving at normal traffic speed, could be a bit longer. Sometimes criminals do have enough time just to commit their crime and get away, I'm afraid. Especially when it comes to a vehicle crime, if they just smash the window, grab something out of the car and run off. So we don't always get there on time, I'm afraid. We do try our best, however.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed, Simon Ahmed, your hands up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sergeant Bobcott, for your presentation. I would echo these are very, very useful information, and if we could have a look at it further on, would be really good to get a bit of in-depth reading to those. I have a question around women's safety. So you've mentioned in the report, I've seen it briefly, that the sexual harassment cases and reporting are still kind of like unexplored. You still don't have the entire picture of what is, because of lack of reporting and what actually goes on there. One of the things that's been mentioned by residents was the Central Line don't have CCTV cameras, but there was a talk around it will be upgraded and that will be added. I would like to know whether there has been any progress in that area. And secondly, one of the preventative measures that was taken a while back, it was the Guardian project. So
yes, Project Guardian, yes.
Which actually really helped increasing the reporting aspect of harassment. I just wanted to have a bit of understanding where it's at, whether there is plans to continue, whether that's
absolutely. We continue to encourage people to report all sorts of crime, and including sexual offences as well. Guardian was a project that was introduced probably about 7-8 years ago, because we believed in British Transport Police that sexual offences specifically are heavily underreported. I think there was a suggestion that only about 10% of sexual offences get reported to us.
4%.
Sorry?
That's roughly below 10%, around 4% gets reported, yes.
What used to be, but I think it's improved quite a lot since. It still gets underreported, unfortunately, but we are doing our best to encourage people to report all sorts of crime. We come up with different initiatives and new ways for people to report crimes, especially crimes as they happen. I don't know if any of you guys are aware, we've now got a special dedicated text service when you can actually send an SMS to our control center. And sometimes it's a bit quicker to do it because it gets picked up straight away and gets disseminated to police officers on the ground. And it actually makes it easier, especially if you've got, for example, a young lady traveling on the underground and she's getting harassed by or gets unwanted sexual attention from somebody else and she doesn't feel confident enough to get her mobile phone out and dial 999 because she's worried that it might trigger a violent response from the harasser, the person responsible for harassment. She can just discreetly text British Transport Police on 61016 and tell them I'm on Central Line train at Newbury Park, for argument's sake, or at somewhere like, and I'm getting harassed. Can police please respond? So it can be done discreetly without alerting the suspect that it's getting reported, and obviously it will still get the same response from us as a 999 call. So we'll try to get to it as quickly as possible and be able to intercept the train whilst minimizing any risk of harm or threat to the victim. So we're trying to come up with creative solutions to try and encourage people to report crime, because it might help somebody to report the crime rather than thinking, well, actually, I'm not going to do it because I don't know if I call the police or if I do something, it might prompt a violent response from the suspect. So we do try to encourage people. We run campaigns. Unfortunately, lockdown made it difficult for us to run community engagements that we used to do all the time. Every month, at least once a month, we have a day of action when we target a particular type of crime, whether it's hate crime, homophobic crime, sexual offences, pickpocketing, etc. So we usually, when we get a lot of officers and police community support officers out on the stations with the leaflets, providing verbal crime advice, encouraging people to report crime, encouraging people to be more aware of their surroundings and try to stay safe on the rail and underground network. But with the lockdown, it made it a bit more difficult for us to actually go out there because of social distancing and all the constraints that COVID legislation introduced, was liaising with the public in person. But hopefully, once we come out of this lockdown, we'll be able to resume this good work.
The other question was around Central Line CCTV.
Central Line CCTV, unfortunately, I can't answer this question because when it comes to any CCTV at the stations, it is responsibility of London Underground. They're responsible for upgrading their trains. We're just using their hardware. We can encourage them to put more cameras in. We can add our own cameras on, specifically static cameras, if you like, covert cameras, if we're running a particular operation with particular issues. But the main CCTV and CCTV on board of their trains is down to London Underground, I'm afraid.
Councillor Ahmed, just so I mean, I know that Mr. Smith is no longer with us from the Central Line, but perhaps either Cal or maybe even Hanifa, actually, if that query could be passed on to the Central Line team.
That would be very much appreciated, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then.
Sorry, all I was going to say about this is just it will make our life so much easier if we have CCTV on board of trains, because especially in recent times, the quality of CCTV improved so much. It just makes our life so much easier in identifying the people responsible, and then it makes it easier for us to put these cases through courts, because with good quality CCTV, the identity of the suspect doesn't get challenged as often, and people are more likely to plead guilty, or people, if we circulate it through social media or in the newspapers, the good quality CCTV images of the suspects, they're much more likely to be identified. So I can only hope that the CCTV on Central Line is going to get introduced as quickly as possible, and good quality CCTV at that.
Thank you for that, Sergeant Bobko. I hope that gets past. Hanifa, did you want to come in?
No, absolutely. I'm happy to take that question back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now finally, Marley, I can see you do have your hand up. So would you like to come in and unmute and ask a question to the Sergeant?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sergeant Murphy. My question to you today is about safety within young people. As you know, July 19th is, as government's calling it, Freedom Day. And this will mean a lot of stuff will be opening up, for example, nightclubs and stuff like that, which will intrigue young people from the ages of 18 and over to go out and enjoy time with their friends. But not only nightclubs, it will intrigue people under 18 to spend some time with friends outside, for example, going out shopping or going out to eat or going cinema and stuff like that. And majority of the time, young people do like to take public transport, which means staying out late. My question to you today is, how do you, how would you suggest that safety within trains and within buses will be, I mean, how will young people be protected on buses and trains within safety? And another question is, as we're coming up down to the new academic year in September, and we have seen a recent rise in crime within young people outside of school and around school area, how will you protect young people within the school grounds and outside the school grounds?
Well, it sounds to me that both questions are linked because they're both about young people's safety on the rail network, whether it's in the evenings when they are going out, or during the day when they're going out shopping, or when they're traveling to or from schools or colleges. And I would imagine that based on what we've done after we were coming out of the second lockdown in March, we had a week of action at the end of the second lockdown when schools went back, when we had police officer presence at all the stations where we had a high footfall of school children, to reassure children, to make sure that we've got enough officers to discourage any sort of criminality, if you like. In the past, I have to say, we did experience a rise in robberies at the start of academic year, when a lot of college kids go back to college with their new mobile phones, new pair of trainers, new jackets, whatever that might be. And they get targeted, unfortunately, by criminals. So usually in response to that, we would have a week or couple of fortnight of action when we'll get more police officers there. The other thing, and I try to tell my kids the same thing, is basically is education. And I think that's probably the most effective weapon we've got, is trying to educate young people on how to be safe on the rail network, or what not to do, or what to do to avoid being victims of crime. And I think we are working quite closely. In my role, I work quite closely with some schools in Tower Hamlets and in Newham, when we're trying to educate young people on how to behave themselves on the rail network, to make sure that they're less likely to be victims of crime, if you like. It's like putting your valuables away, not having your valuables on display, trying to be aware of your surroundings. And if you're traveling on a night out in the evenings, try to stay in groups, keep your parents informed of where you are and what you're doing. And, like simple tips like that will hopefully reduce number of crimes. But we will continue, as I said, closer to September, once the schools starting to get ready to go back. We will probably be, again, conducting quite a few days of action, where we'll be offering young people advice at our stations on how to behave themselves, not to be victims of robberies or pickpockets even, We've got a really nice leaflet explaining pickpocketing tactics, and so look, yeah, education and prevention. And the other thing that I mentioned in my earlier response at the start of this meeting is that we're also running days of action when we have knife arches and high police presence at our stations, when we try to conduct operations stopping criminals getting on our network or discouraging criminals from going on our network. And sometimes we target 2 or 3 stations, doing a bit of a moving block, if you like, starting at one station, moving to the next station a couple of hours later, trying to stop, make it a bit more hostile for criminals to come and get on our network, and trying to make it safer for young people who actually want to go places and want to enjoy themselves without fearing for their safety or without fearing for their possessions. Does it help? Did it answer your question at all, or?
Yes, just one last question, if I may, Chair.
Go ahead, Valerie.
My last question to you, Sergeant Murphy, is these officers, are they uniformed? Are they only uniformed? Are they uniformed and non-uniformed officers?
Uniform and plain clothes as well. We've got specialist teams on London Underground. They call them DIPS squad. They deal with pickpockets. We've got specialist teams that deal with basically, they're trained in behavioral assessment. They're not just looking out for criminals, they're looking for criminal behavior, for potential terrorist behavior, and they're out on the network all the time. So you've got both uniformed presence trying to discourage people from committing crimes and trying to maybe install a bit of confidence in traveling public, and plainclothes officers who are actually trying to catch criminals in the act.
Well, that's been very exhaustive. Marley, thank you for your questions. I'm glad you got to ask them.
Thank you.
And Sergeant Bumper, thank you so much for your presentation and your answers to all the questions this evening. And we do have a little more of the meeting left to go, but as with all our other presenters this evening, you're very welcome to leave now if you wish. But thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so members, I am aware of the time, but there were a couple of other items that weren't sort of segregated on the agenda by presenter, but these included public transport services post-COVID, which I feel like actually all of our speakers have probably addressed, Whips Cross, which we've discussed already, and then there was the additional item on air quality, the effects of ULEZ on public transport, and I'll note that the buses presenter earlier did touch on that. But I think some of our presenters this evening, by which I mean Hanifa, had a note on ULEZ and public transport. So Hanifa, I wondered if you wanted to share that with us now, unless I've made that up, if that's something you've got for us.
Sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
Yes, it was just with regards to the effects of the ultra-low emission zone, which will soon be affecting Redbridge on public transport providers, if that affects buses.
Yeah, so I'd just like to add that we didn't actually quite understand the question, so we did actually email Redbridge officers and we asked them to clarify what they meant by the question. So I'm happy to give a written response. However, I'm happy to at the moment give you an overview of ULEZ if anybody would find that useful. But the actual question wasn't quite understood, so we did offer a written response once we know what the actual question was.
Okay, well, members I was going to look for nods of agreement, but all I can see are cameras that are off. But panel members, in light of the time, if they look happy, Councillor Mrs. Ryan looks happy, and if my vice chair is happy, then I think we can safely move on. Well, thank you for that offer, Hanifa. I did just also want to say, of the people who are here, I know that Katrina has been here from the start, and we really appreciated you coming last time, and I can see that you're still here now. And I just wanted to say, if you had any updates for us from a Crossrail MTR point of view, we'd be very pleased to hear them. So I'll hand the floor over to you for a bit.
Oh, thanks so much. I don't know. Basically, the works at Ilford are still sort of, on schedule at the moment. Very much like I reported last time. So there's not a great deal of new stuff there. But just to say, we're still working. Myself, my team is still looking at community events with the Paragon Residents Association, Ilford South. And Ilford South entrance is permanently open now, 7 days a week, mirroring the opening hours of York Road. And things seem to be like quite good there really at Ilford at the moment, as well as Seven Kings and Goodmays. So all good stuff at the moment as far as I can see. But if anyone does have any questions you'd like me to answer or take back to the powers that be that I report into, I'll be happy to as well. Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Does anyone have any questions for Katrina on MTR Crossrail issues? And I should say, actually, now at this time in the meeting, did any member have any other questions on transport matters that maybe Hanifa can take back in terms of written responses? Councillor Ahmed, Simon Ahmed.
Not a question really, Chair, just to say thank you to Katrina Tracy for engaging with the residents and trying to deliver some good community partnership work. Thank you for that. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. They've made us so welcome as well, and they really work for solutions with us as well. So it's fantastic. They're wonderful to be with. So thank you so much, Councillor.
Lovely. Thanks
as
very
we all
much,
know,
Katrina.
it's private land, so it's just that only limited things that can be done. Thank you.
Yeah, very true. Thank you.
Thank you. Hanifa, I can see your hand's gone up again, and then I'll go to Councillor Mushtaq. Oh, sorry, I think you're muted, Hanifa. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I just felt like I didn't get an answer. Would you like an overview of the ULEZ, or would it be better coming from a written response? If a written response, I'm happy to take some questions now. Whatever works best.
Right, with you. Okay, yes. Sorry. I meant that I thought a written response would be best this evening. Do members have any specific questions around the impact of ULEZ on public transport beyond what we heard from the buses, or would a summary of what's proposed for ULEZ be most helpful to be sent in writing? Members, nods for a summary, or unless anyone else wants to come in. Okay. Well, yes. If
yes,
I think a summary of the ULEZ situation would be best in writing, if that's possible. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hanifa.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Councillor Mushtaq Ahmed, you did have your hand up. Did you still want to ask a question? Speak.
Thank you, Chair. And just as Hanifa is, I just wanted to ask something about the TfL having this consultation. But there was a consultation on parking on A12, and wherever TfL has like their jurisdiction. I think due to COVID and restrictions, that has been like pushed back. Is there something you can please take back and get back to us? It's like A12 from Redbridge all the way to Gants Hill. That's what comes in Cradle.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. So I do remember that we were just before the whole COVID situation, we were doing some work on looking at enforcing down the A12. Is that what you're referring to?
That's right, yes.
Yes, so I'm more than happy to look into that as well. I mean, my understanding is that we, actually, as far as I remember, what we did was we actually done a small engagement exercise in the area. We asked for some feedback. The feedback that we got was not really what we expected. It wasn't very much actually at all, but what we got wasn't really, anything
that's
that.
Fine. If you could please get back to that.
Sorry, you broke up there.
Sorry, I said if you could please get back to me in an email or something, that will be really helpful.
Absolutely, more than happy to do that, Councillor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. If no more members then have questions for the transport representatives this evening, then I think I'd just like to thank all of them for coming virtually tonight and speaking. I know they're not all still with us, but thank you all very much. It's been very helpful as ever, and we'll appreciate the offers to write afterwards to the panel where there's been made, and we'll look forward to hearing those. So thank you very much for joining us. speakers, transport speakers, this does mean it's your chance to go home, unless you really want to stay, or I should say log off if you're probably home already, unless you really want to stay for the remainder of the meeting. Panel members, we do have just some quick more items of business to go through. The next one is item 6 on the agenda, dates of future meetings and indicative business. They're listed on the agenda, either on the .gov app or online. Do members have any comments on these? Obviously, the dates are fixed in the municipal calendar. Do members have any comments on the business? I did have a provisional one, and I wondered if I could be cheeky and see if. Oh, she isn't. I was going to ask if Vanessa was still here from the Youth Council, because I was looking for guidance on how feasible it would be for our young people to come and have their meeting on the 6th of January. From my experience,
Chair.
Oh, sorry, someone was wanting to come in.
Yes, it's me, Marley, Chair.
Oh, Marley, hello. Yes.
Yes, Vanessa had to leave, but I will message her for you if you like.
Thank you. Oh, no, it's not urgent. It's just a question of when the school term will start in January. I can see Cal's got her hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we can check that. Yeah, we'll check that from the scrutiny team with Chris Marr, Raina, Vanessa, all our youth
Thank you.
officers, and if we need to swap it with the November date, then we'll liaise with yourself and the Vice Chair.
Thanks. That's very helpful, Cal. That would have just been my suggestion. I think in the past they have been swapped that way around. But Councillor Mrs. Ryan, I can see your hands up, but we need you to unmute.
Yeah, it's just I was going to say, if we in the winter is not as easy, if a spring date might be better for them, but I think it would be good to have them if we can, depending on what's happening with COVID and restrictions, of course.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean,
because
I think
they've been very valuable, those meetings.
Yes, obviously, I think it would be best to have the young person meeting in person in the town hall if we can. We know those have been really popular and we've had a really good participation. But I think if we got a date in, and we have to make it work digitally, then hopefully we can do that too. But I think the important thing is just to have the date in and make sure that schools have lots of notice if it's going to be in during the school day. I think that's the important thing. But thank you for that, Mrs. Ryan. In which case. If there aren't any further comments on the future meetings and indicative business, the next item on the agenda is whether there are any urgent items, and I haven't had any. So the final item would be the motion to exclude the public, but there is no exempt business because there is no more business after this item. And we're rapidly running out of public apart from anything else. But so it just remains for me to say thank you all very much for coming, and to everyone who's come across the course of our meeting this evening. And we'll now close the meeting and stop the broadcast to all the massive audience around the borough and the world. So thank you everyone, and I look forward to seeing you